Hi folks, it's Di here. Okay, I got another VR for akdriller. I just got the last one done, and I um, was working on it, getting it ready to upload, and while I was waiting for the movie file to save, I was catching up on some videos, and I went to AK's channel, and he had already popped up the next story time. So I watched that and finished up my first one, got that posted, and decided, well, I'm going to jump right on this one instead of waiting a whole week, because I don't know what's going to happen next week. I'm booked to work. They scheduled me for 6 days next week, so I don't think I'll be able to get some more video work done until after Christmas time. So I figured, well, I'm going to jump on this right away. So, hey, AK, I like this, the second one you did here. This one is, have you ever been lost or stranded? And I liked your stories. It's great. I liked your story about you and your boy, and it's interesting how young folks, if they get kind of turned around and they're not quite sure where they are, right away the first thing a person wants to do, and it's not just the young folks. I mean, I know a lot of adults that react that way. All of a sudden they start feeling like, I'm never getting out of here. We're never finding our way out of here. There's no way. Well, so I've seen that happen so many times, and I got a really, I got a kick out of that story. That was really a good story, AK. So I'll jump into it. Have I ever been lost? Well, like AK, I can't remember ever truly being lost, except for one occasion. And I was only 12 years old at the time. It was the year that my pop had passed away, and my mother, she said, well, that kid's got such a wild hair, I can't control him. So she decided she's going to send me off to this church camp. Well, it was a big outfit, big church camp. It's kind of a neat camp, though. It had all these rustic cabins, and yeah, it was an okay camp. Well, here's the scoop. At that camp, they had about 80 kids for any given week. And like I said, I had a wild hair. I was restless. And we had a canteen that we could go to once a day, and you could get pop and snacks and the like. Well, they didn't have pop in cans at that time. For us kids, we had to get bottles of pop. Well, when you got 80 kids, every single kid grabbing 1 or 2 bottles of pop every day, and only about 50% of those bottles ever came back. Kids were just pitching them in the woods, anywhere and everywhere. And so the people that owned the camp decided to have a little contest and told all the kids in the camp, if you kids go out and collect all the pop bottles, whatever kid, or whatever cabin, in fact, it was every cabin, whichever cabin collects the most pop bottles, we're going to give those kids that cabin. Each cabin had like 10 kids in it. We'll give that cabin 4 pizzas and a big watermelon as a prize. Well, I like that idea, and I figured we're going to get those pizzas and that watermelon for our cabin. So I went out back of their big camp kitchen, and I found me a gunny sack that used to have 100 pounds of taters in it. And I took off with that gunny sack, and I started thinking, now, I've got 80 kids combing all the trails around camp. And I had heard from one of the camp workers that about 2 miles from camp, that there was a town dump. And I thought, if I can get to that dump, I bet you I'll find a lot of pop bottles down at that dump. And they told me that it was down towards the end of the lake we were on. So I just followed the lake shore down and through the woods, and no trails. And I'm trompsing off in the woods with this gunny sack. And it must have taken me a good 2 hours or so. And sure enough, I found the dump. I got in that dump, and sure enough, I mean, there were so many pop bottles in that dump. I started filling that old gunny sack. Well, I got that gunny sack full of pop bottles. Now, for a 12-year-old, that's a quite the load to be dragging around with you. And I couldn't see the lake from where the dump was, and I couldn't remember where I came into the dump. So I started heading, I followed the road into the dump out till I hit another road. I hit that road, and I got turned around, and I headed the wrong direction on that road. Well, as the day went on, I realized, oh man, I am definitely going the wrong way. I must have hiked another 4 miles, 5 miles, dragging that bag, and nothing looked familiar. So I turned around and headed back the other direction on that road. Well, unbeknownst to me, that road doesn't go anywhere near camp. The road to that dump, you have to go like 3-4 miles north, and then you connect to that road, and then it weaves back down near the camp within a couple miles. So I'm following that road, and I come across another road that cuts off to the left. And I'm going, well, camp has to be down that direction. But I'm looking down that road, and I see it's turning off to the right. And I'm going, well, that would go away from camp. So I'll just cut through the woods. Well, I didn't realize that from where I was to camp, it's about 4.5, 5 miles through the woods to camp. I got about halfway back to camp, and the sun starts setting. Now I'm getting nervous. I'm 12 years old. I got a big bag of pop bottles. I don't have a flashlight. I don't have anything for starting a fire. I'm thinking, oh boy, all the lessons I ever learned from my pop and my granddad were doing me no good. So here I had turned myself around so much that day that what should have been about a maybe 2.5, 3 hour outing to get a bag full of pop bottles, it turned into a little over 9 hours of wandering around in those woods until I spotted the lake through the trees, and I headed right for the lake. The sun was just about set, completely set, and I could see the lights of camp along the shoreline about 3/4 of a mile away. So I just stuck with the shoreline and worked my way into camp, dragging my bag of pop bottles. And, you know, the worst part of it was, they never missed me. They didn't even know I was gone. So I would have spent a long, cold night out there in them woods alone with my bag of pop bottles. Today, I would have known that I probably, before the sun set, if I would have had, because it was a nice clear day, I could have used a pop bottle to start a fire using solar, you know. But that's the only time I can think of where I was truly lost. Now, I tell people all the time, I'm like AK driller. I have a good sense of direction. When I get out there, I may not be in an area that I'm familiar with at all, but I know my compass directions without a compass. I know my north, south, east, and west. I don't ever go into an area. When I lived in the northwestern Rockies, there were many times I went out for 6, 8, 12 days without a compass. Just good sense of direction, plus a little bit of front end research about what the area had. Were there roads? Were there rivers? Major areas of identification that if I did get turned around, all I'd have to know is, do I need to head north, south, east, or west to run into one of those major landmarks and then get myself out of where I was at. So I never felt lost other than that one time walking around in the woods with my pop bottles. So I've had people tell me, oh, I'm sure you've been lost more than that once. I said, no, really, I haven't. I said, there's been a lot. I'm a firm believer that I know exactly where I am every minute of the day. It might be someplace I've never seen before, but I know that's where I am. Don't tell me I'm not here. Of course, I know exactly where I am. Sometimes I don't know exactly how to get somewhere from there, but I got a good enough general idea. So I never feel that I get lost. Now, for AK Driller, I loved it. You mentioned Wisconsin, and that you looked at the maps and you wonder, you hear about these hunters that get lost in Wisconsin, and how could they do that? It's so checkerboarded with roads, and you know, how can they even get lost in Wisconsin? Well, up here where I live is the most remote portion of Wisconsin. We have an area that's called the Barrens. It's part of the Chequamegon Forest, and it's honeycombed with roads, but they're all Forest Service roads, old logging roads, many of which aren't even passable anymore. That section of the Chequamegon Forest covers over 100 square miles of forest that is uninhabited. There's nobody lives there. There's between 700,000 and 800,000 acres of land out there. And as I said, many of those roads aren't even passable with four-wheel drive anymore. I've covered every square mile of the Barrens over the last 30 years, and I call it remote. I don't call it true wilderness because there is accessibility. And if you buy yourself a good plot map and you tear a couple of sheets out of that plot map that covers the Barrens, and most of the Forest Service roads, the signage is gone, there's no identification of the roads, so you have to have a general sense of where you are, and you just need to know what north, south, east, and west is. And I totally agree with AK. How can you get lost here? But they do. And you know who gets lost? Townies. Folks from town, from the cities, people from out of state. They get up here. I found a fella that had put 160 miles on his truck, driving in circles out in the Barrens. And I came across him, and he was in a panic. He was down to 1/8 of a tank of gas in his truck when I came across him. He flagged me down. And I told him, well, then you're going to follow me straight to the nearest town because you're going to run out of gas, and I don't have any spare gas with me. Well, it only took us 15 minutes to get from where he was to town. But he couldn't figure it out because of the network of old logging roads. He was going down one and across another and then back around and coming right back where he was. And yeah, I can see how that happens if you're not familiar with the area. But obviously the man didn't know north, south, east, and west. If you head east, you're going to hit a major highway. If you head south, you're going to hit a major highway. Same with west and same with north. So, yeah, I don't know how they get lost out there. I really don't, but they do. Every year we have somebody lost in the woods, and it's inexperience and foolishness sometimes, and sometimes no common sense. But that's all I've got for getting lost in the woods. Now I have people say, oh, you talk about getting lost in the woods all the time. You talk about how people should not get lost in the woods and blah, blah, blah. You think you know everything. And I tell them flat out, yes, I do. I know everything. And then they go, well, that's awful conceited of you, Sty, that you think you know everything. I said, well, it's not conceited. I said, I grabbed the Webster Dictionary and I opened it up and I looked up everything and I read the description. So now I know everything. So don't go there, because you're doggone right. Webster has everything in the dictionary. So I said, everybody can know everything. I said, doesn't do a lot of good when you don't know anything after you've learned everything. So there you go, folks. Thanks, AK. I love your story time. You all have a good holiday. Thanks for watching my VR to AK Driller. Make sure to check AK Driller out. I like his channel. It's great. So this is Stein Orr saying, you all have a nice day. Bye-bye.